The way how users are able to create arpeggios in Sytrus or Harmor is quite different, but very powerful. Hi. Creating arpeggios the way these plugins do might look very complicated and daunting at first glance, but trust me, once you look a little bit behind the scenes, it becomes second nature very easily and shows itself as the powerful and nearly unlimited tool it really is. I'm sorry if I am a bit overtly clear in this video, but understanding the basics is a crucial factor here. If you have understood the principles, you already understood everything. If you lack some of the basics, you will quickly run into difficulties when you want to implement your own ideas. So let's dive in. It's important to know that the arpeggio feature in the envelopes can only work with chords. It cannot work when trying to feed it with a single note. There is of course a way to create one-finger arpeggio type sequences, but this has to be done differently. To make everything easily distinguishable, I created a more unusual 4-note chord of just octave steps from C2 to C5 and a not very appealing simple sine wave. This is not meant to be sounding good, but to be easily recognizable by ear and as well with an analyzer. In general, the arpeggio feature of the envelopes can be used with any available one. For volume, for pitch, for cutoff, but the most common and easiest way is to concentrate on the volume envelope. That's what we do here. First, I activate the volume envelope I already prepared here. Basically, I chopped our long notes into quarter notes like this. But apart from letting the envelope loop after one bar, I didn't give it any further instructions until now. That's why we still hear the full chord. Chopped, but still all notes playing at the same time. Let's right-click the first point and look at its options. The interesting part for us is the arpeggio break section. Besides the activated none, which obviously result in not having any arpeggio action at all, we have to figure out what previous, same and next are about. Even if I break the order here, but I start with changing the point to same. The pattern still contains all notes, but just the first note, C2, gets played now. So what happens here? First, setting the point to a different arpeggio break than none activates the ARP functionality of the envelope, no matter which one I choose. Second, after activating the arpeggio feature, I have to tell the envelope which note to play. My choice of same told the envelope to play the same note like before. Well, there was no note playing before, as I set it on the first point of the envelope. Each time it is an arpeggio breakpoint's turn to play, it has to check if there was a note playing before or not. A? Yes, there was a note playing before. Apply the set action based on which note was playing. For example, if the C3 would have played before, and the next point is set to same, it would repeat the C3. If the C5 would have played before, it would have repeated C5. In our case, it was B. No, there wasn't a note playing before. Then the order applies of how the notes in the piano roll are laid out. The option same then means play the lowest note of the chord. The option next then means play the second note of the chord. The option previous would play the note underneath. Let's check if I'm telling the truth here. The point is at the moment set to same. And yes, it's playing the lowest note of our chord, C2. If I am right, setting the point to next should play now the second note of the chord, C3. And it does. What happens if I choose previous? There is no note underneath the lowest. It jumps to the top and plays C5. A classic arpeggio is all about looping, not only from the end to the start again, but as well from the top to the bottom or other way round. An up arpeggio goes from the first note to the second, to the third, and to the last note, starting with the first again. After the last note it loops back to the first. This equals to our option next. Go above, go above. If there is no note above anymore, loop back to the lowest and then go above again. A down arpeggio starts at the top, goes to the note below, and then loops back to the top. This is what our option previous does. Go below. If there is no note below anymore, loop back to the top. As I chose previous for the first point, there was no note below C2 anymore, so it looped back to the top and played the C5. And that's it. There's nothing else behind. Same means play the same note like before. If there was no note before, play the lowest note of the chord. Next means play the next note above the last one. If there was no note before, play the note above the lowest note of the chord. Previous means play the next note below the last one. If there was no note before, loop back and play the topmost note of the chord. This is the complete logic behind the arpeggiator breaks of the envelope. Let's put this into action and make a simple up-type arp. For the first envelope point, we have to determine where the arpeggio shall start. A classic up style starts with the lowest note, so I have to set the point to same. The second arpeggio break happens here, and for playing up, we have to set it to next. This will play a C3, as the note before was the C2. Again next will play the C4. Again next will play the C5. Let's try it out. Oops, something went wrong here. It started right, but as the first loop was finished, it played the C5 a second time before going back to C2. The first envelope point is set the same. We have learned this can have two meanings. The first one is, play again the same note like before. Only if there was no note before, play the lowest note of the chord. This time we had a note before, and this was C5. It's not a wonder that the first point now played a second time C5 before looping back to C2. Somehow we have to tell the envelope to loop back to the lowest note before it reaches the first point again. And this is done with the last point of the envelope. We have to set it to next as well, even if it doesn't play anything. But it tells the envelope two things. First, go to the next note above in the chord. There is no note above after C5, so it loops back to C2, even if it doesn't get played, because the envelope ends here. Second, because it's set to end of loop, it tells the envelope to jump back to the first point. Let's check if this works now. Perfect. Now a classic down-type arpeggio. This arpeggio starts with the highest note and goes down then. How do I reach that? We had the answer already. Setting the first envelope point to previous will do the trick. And instead of having set the following points to next, we change them all now to previous. Well, these two types of arpeggios can be made more simple. As I do all the same action over and over again, I can reduce the envelope points to just the first cycle. Without any further changes than activating the loop end again for the new last point, we got still our classic down arp. Setting the first point to same and the last point to next brings back our up type arpeggio. It's actually quite simple, isn't it? And you don't even have to bother with all these right-click menus. Do you remember that I've skipped one tool in the last video? Create sequence. These settings give us again our classic up-style arpeggio. We find here all the arpeggio breaks we had before. The minus for same, arrow up for next, arrow down for previous. A simple left-click drag on the arrow down gives us our down arp. But here it's quite simple to create more complicated arps with ease. Or expanding the envelope to more steps and make it even more complex. Every time again we open the tool in the same session, it remembers the last settings we accepted to prevent parameter jumps. We have different tabs to modify manually attack level, decay slopes, sustain levels, or release slopes of each step, or even randomize them for each tab separate. Or humanize them, which means in this case random changes of a limited range. We have global controls for time base, swing, attack, decay, sustain, and gate. We can set each step to off, on, hold, which affects the gate, and stick, which expands the step by overwriting the next one. At the end, this tool is hard to explain. One can discover it best by simply toying around and this genius random functions. If you don't like what you did, there's always undo. But everybody who looked carefully may probably have noticed that I left out something. What are these double arrows up and down about? So let's check it out. As you can see, we have now in our envelope as well 2 arrows down on the first point and 2 arrows up on this point here. But by right-clicking them, they are showing the same options as before and are set to previous and next. Where does this second arrow comes from? The answer is quite easy, but genius at the same moment. There are 2 points layered on top of each other now. Right-clicking one and set it to none. Let the second arrow disappear. Just think a moment what this means. We can layer multiple points to jump in bigger increments in our chord to arpeggiate it. Until now, we had, for example, for the first point just the option to play the lowest note, the second note, or the topmost one. This is enough for 3-note chords. But here there was no option to start with the third. Until now. The first point set to same plays the lowest note, C2. The first point set to next plays the second note, C3. But if I insert now a second point, set again to next and layer it on top of the first, it doubles the action now, which gives me the third note, C4. With this method, I can now jump forward and backward in as big steps as I like. Again, just think a second what freedom this provides. You can basically choose any time with such a simple method which note of your chords get played and when. No matter what note was played before. You can break the order. And much more important, no matter how many notes your chord contains. You could have a chord of 20 notes and still be free to decide exactly which note is played at which time, no matter what happened before. Very important, arpeggio breaks have to happen on the 0 line at the bottom. If I raised this point here, it plays the full chord until the next break turns it back to the arpeggio again. This can be a wished behavior, but if not, make always sure that every arpeggio break is located completely at the bottom. Next, in the envelope you find a global option, which forces to retrigger the envelope for all voices when a new note gets played. Normally in a synth, every note triggers its own envelope. This is a wished behavior. Not so when the envelope is used as an arpeggiator. Triggering a separate envelope without retriggering and therefore resyncing the others leads easily to chaos. The global switch helps here a lot, if not all notes are happening at the same time. Here's a different example with a more pleasant sound and chord structure. I activate the volume envelope, which sounds like this. Because I have defined here some arpeggio breaks, the oscillator plays first the lowest note, then the second, the third, and then the full chord before the envelope gets retriggered, and start from the beginning again with the new set of notes. The full chord got triggered because I set this breakpoint to this amplitude. I route now the oscillator through a filter, where I have set a simple sample and hold modulation for the cutoff. Let's beef up the sound with some wave shaping. This sounds already quite cool, but I like a bit more. I created a little sequence with arpeggio breaks for the second oscillator. And both together. Nice. Yes, Image Line again did it differently, but I hope everybody can see by now why. And it doesn't stop here. I just worked here with 2 oscillators. Sytrus offers 6 of them. Each of them can make use out of their own envelopes with all this flexibility. And there are envelopes for each filter and the FX on top of that. To make a long story short, you can do whatever you have in mind with nearly an unlimited freedom. The only limit is your imagination. But this was just a bit of theory around this topic. I leave you alone with my last example put in a little context. It's up to you now to put this into action and come up with the greatest ideas the world has ever seen. Have fun, and thank you for watching.